Now we have free paper of Dr. Safal Khanal, research fellow from the University of Auckland. He will be talking on MRI of blood flow in the human retina choroid complex.
Pointer. I can't show the pointer there. Thank you, Juno. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I begin, I'd like to congratulate everyone who is involved in organizing this conference. I think it has been a great success, and I'm really glad to be a part of it. I have thoroughly enjoyed the conference over the last 2 days, and I'm sure you have done as much as I have done as well. Oops. No, it doesn't work. Okay. So one of the works that we have been doing in Auckland Myopia Lab is investigating myopia mechanisms, and especially retinal and choroidal responses to different interventions for myopia. And we do this by using different techniques. Some of these are multifocal ERG, optical coherence tomography, and MRI-based technique. I won't have time to go over all of these, but what I wanted to do today was to introduce to you this MRI technique that we have been working on to get quantitative measures of blood perfusion in the retina and choroid. Now, it leads to the question why we are interested in studying perfusion in the first place. Well, we just saw from the previous talk about retinal diseases, and retinal ischemia is one of the most plays a major role in the etiology of these retinal diseases. And so the perfusion is a fundamental physiological parameter that is essential for the tissue health and survival. It is basically the delivery of oxygen and nutrients to the tissues at the level of the capillaries. But this is not to say that only capillaries are involved in perfusion. The major components of vascular systems such as arteries and veins also play a major role. But the key thing here is that perfusion can be an indicator for changes in tissue metabolism, either in short term due to neural activity, or in longer term due to changes due to certain diseases. I know that the words blood flow and perfusion have been used interchangeably in the literature previously, but I'd like to highlight that perfusion actually incorporates a factor which is the per unit weight of the tissue in its definition. So it is at the level of the capillaries where the blood is actually perfusing into the tissues. Now, when we look at the ocular vascular beds in the eye, we can see two different circulatory systems, one in the form of retinal and one in the form of choroidal. But the choroid has almost 8 times more blood flow, so it is the main supply of blood even to the retina. This is true for most of the species. In some of the species, such as rabbits and guinea pigs, where the retinal vessels are absent, the choroid is the only supply of blood to the retina. So if we are able to obtain measures of perfusion in the retina and choroid, then we could perhaps get a better understanding at some of these retinal ischemic diseases that we saw earlier in the earlier talk. Now, unfortunately, there are no quantitative methods to obtain these measures as of now. Most of the blood flow techniques we have are light-based or sound-based, and these are not the direct measures of either blood flow or perfusion. They derive inferences from either the speed or velocity or the reflectance of in the images. optical coherence tomography angiography has been certainly revolutionizing the imaging sector at the moment, but there are certain limitations with that technique as well, and as of now it is only qualitative. So we thought maybe we can use MRI to actually get these measures of perfusion, and this has been done for brain perfusion for quite a number of years. So why don't we apply this technique and see if we can get measures of perfusion in the eyes itself. But before going into that, I'd like to introduce this a little bit because it may be new to a lot of you. So it works on the principle that there is magnetization in the human body, and because the human body is made of water, which contains the hydrogen atoms and which contains the proton, which is a charged particle, and because of this charge there is a magnetization associated with that proton. So when we look at all the protons in the body, they are randomly arranged in different directions, and these the directions of these protons cancel each other out, so there is no net magnetization. But if we put someone in a very high magnetic field, such as the MRI scanner, then these line up either in the direction or in the opposite direction. But there is a net effect of magnetization in a certain direction, and that's what we can use to generate those MRI images. Now, this technique called arterial spin leveling is really beautiful in the sense that it offers non-invasive method to get the measures. And so that means that you don't have to inject any contrast agent. It relies on the blood itself to generate that contrast agent. And the other thing is it gives you the quantitative measures of perfusion so that you can compare across different centers, or you can also follow that person longitudinally in time. The way it works is by sorry, I can't get the pointer working. So the way it works is by getting two sets of images. So if you see the the way it works is by getting two different images. If you see the control image, there's nothing. It is a standard MRI image where you take the image at the level of the tissue that you are interested in. But the other time when you're taking an image, you purposely invert the direction of the magnetization that we saw previously, that is associated with the hydrogen atom. So when this blood reaches up to the tissue, then you acquire another image again. Now, so if you look at the level of the tissue, when you are getting a control image, there are these direction of magnetization. When you are acquiring this other image, which is called level, and because we have inverted some of the spins, these are in the other direction. Now, if you subtract these two images, the static tissue signal cancels out, and what remains is whatever the blood that is flowing into that region, and that we can use that to generate the measures of perfusion. But the problem with getting only one image is that there is too much noise, and so we have to get several series of these images and get the subtraction done and generate the mean perfusion image after getting those several series of images, which often means that there's quite a bit of time in getting these images. At the end, what we get is perfusion in terms of absolute quantitative units, which is comparable across studies and also longitudinally in time. Now, like all MRI methods, the main problem is the head motion, and also it is more problematic in ASL MRI because the total duration is a little bit longer than other MRI methods. So because of this head motion, there are images which might not align properly, and because we are subtracting one image from the other, there might be artifacts just because of this head motion. So it is important to align these images before processing for perfusion measurements. We do that by something called 6-parameter transformation. I would not go into details about that, but it is just basically trying to see a structure and trying to match that structure in different images over time. I just wanted to show how this, the results of how the algorithm works. So if you see on the upper image here, these are